see, and also to the new faces. And I want to honor you for being here, because what brings you here is a heart for your fellow human beings. So Alvin has told you a little bit about me. So just to share with you a little more about me tonight, I've been on the journey of coaching for the past 19 years and on a journey of healing and personal empowerment for the past 23 years. I am a Commensa credentialed master coach and International Coaching Federation certified World Business Executive Coaches, the European Mentors and Coaching Council, team coach, creative consciousness coach, ICF, International Coaching Federation credentialed, and a neuro coach, which I am really excited to share with you, because it's to share with you that our brains can change. We can rewire our thinking. We can totally be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And then I specialize in neuro-linguistic programming, integrated intelligences, which is your heart brain, your mind brain, your gut brain, your nervous system. And I'm a coach, trainer, and certifier. So I've been coaching, counseling, mentoring, and training, those different hats you put on, because you show up to what is showing up and what your client needs. I've worked in business, corporate, and the non-profit organization sectors in the community, which has been an amazing blessing for me. Yeah, I love relationship coaching, because all life rises and falls on the foundation of relationship, teams, life, and then trauma. My heart is moved by trauma. I've experienced various traumas in my life since a child, in my young teenage years, my young adulthood, and throughout my life. And I am a testimony to being able to become and to being a continuous overcomer. And that we're not defined by what happens to us, but how we are equipped and skilled by the people that come along our path, so that we have the tools and the wisdom and the knowledge to address what comes at us in life and learn how to respond better as we know better. I'm passionate about reducing suffering, yours, mine, and others that come along our path. I love catalyzing resilience, that ability not to bounce back, but to bounce forward in life, greater than what you were before, and then to find meaning and significance in what happens to you during life, and to use that as a message, as a mission, to bring meaning and significance to life. And then I'm all about joy, because joy is the biggest jet fuel in your engine, right? And about transforming life, taking coal and turning it into alchemical gold. So it is my joy and my pleasure and my privilege to share the first module of our 6-module trauma counseling course with you tonight. So let's look at what is trauma. Let's define it. First of all, great counseling, coaching is supportive and simple. Let's keep it simple. And realizing that emotional well-being is just as important as breathing. I'm going to minimize the videos now so that we can record the full presentation for you. So trauma is defined as a unique individual experience. It's different and unique for everybody. What would be traumatic for one is not traumatic maybe for another. And this unique individual experience is triggered by an external overwhelming event or persistent overwhelming conditions over time, in which one's ability to cope is compromised. And listen to this, as one experiences a real or a perceived threat to his or her bodily integrity, or a real or perceived threat to that of someone that is important to you, a significant other. So psychological trauma is a response to an event that a person finds highly stressful. And trauma can cause a wide range of physical and emotional problems and symptoms. So we've heard maybe of big T versus little t trauma. How do we differentiate between little t and big T trauma? It's differentiated by the event that catalyzed the traumatic response. Now, big T trauma is generally related to a life-threatening event or situation, a natural disaster, a violent crime, a school shooting, or a serious car accident. In addition, acute psychological traumas such as the death of a parent are all part of the big T trauma definition. Now, chronic, that's ongoing, year after year trauma, such as repeated abuse, can also qualify as big T trauma. Little t trauma refers to events that typically don't involve violence or disaster, but they do create significant distress. For young adults, examples of trauma might be a breakup. I remember as a teenager, you know, people saying, oh, it's puppy love. But to a teenager, it's trauma. The death of a pet, losing a job, being bullied, or being rejected, or feeling rejected by a friend group. While these incidents don't threaten a young person's life or physical safety, I want you to hear this. They produce exactly the same trauma responses in adults and children as big T trauma does. When they do MRIs of the brain that is experiencing big or small T trauma, it lights up exactly the same, to the same magnitude. In fact, there's now evidence that repeated exposure to those little t traumas can cause more emotional harm than exposure to one big T traumatic event. And now I want to share with you, my friends, who of us have not experienced trauma in our lives? Every single one of us that have gone through childhood, teenagehood, and adulthood have experienced trauma. We are all traumatized. Trauma isn't the event that is happening to you or outside of you. Trauma is something that happens inside of you. It's what's happening inside our children, inside our fellow human beings. And trauma disrupts our whole nervous system, which I will share with you just now. Our central nervous system regulates all of the parts of our body, including our internal organs, our lungs, our kidneys, our bladder, our intestines, everything. And our central nervous system is picking up sensations from our environment and continuously making adjustments, trying to stay in balance so that we are able to respond to that stimulus. The stimulus travels right down our back into all the nerves of our body. The sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system are two major subdivisions in our bodies responsible for sensations of danger and safety. The sympathetic nervous system gears us up for fight or flight or freeze in response to stressors. And it mobilizes the body's resources to face potential threats. Now, something in itself might not seem threatening to one person, but because of all the memories that are stored in our subconscious mind, right from in utero before birth, another person might smell, sense, feel, hear something that triggers, I'm in danger. The parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest and calm, is the body's built-in mechanism for rest and relaxation. It helps us recuperate, rejuvenate, and maintain a state of calm. It restores all the body's cells and prevents us from getting ill. Ultimately, any event or ongoing situation that causes distress, fear, and this is important, a sense of helplessness, like you can't do anything to change this, qualifies as trauma. And trauma can have a serious mental, physical, and emotional impact on negatively influencing daily functioning and relationships. Traumatic stress is associated with higher risk of suicide, as well as anxiety, depression, and co-occurring issues, including substance abuse and eating disorders. Now let's have a look at that sympathetic nervous system activation. When a person experiences trauma, the sympathetic nervous system is activated and it releases stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. And these hormones increase our heart rate, our blood pressure, and our respiration rate, and all in preparation for the body to either fight or flee from a perceived threat or danger. I'm going to play a short video. Excuse the introduction, because there's always got to be ad. They always have to try and sell us something. But this is most informative.
Armando Surungan, Biology and Medicine videos. Please make sure to subscribe, join the forum and group. For the latest videos, please visit Facebook Armando Surungan. Please like, and here you can also ask questions, answer questions, and post some interesting things, including your artworks. You can also change the quality settings to the highest one for better graphics. In this neurology video, we'll look at the divisions of the nervous system. The nervous system is divided into two parts. The central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord. This is where all information, all signals basically comes to, and where all information and signals basically comes out from, and also where information can be stored. Then you have the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is as important as the central nervous system, because the peripheral nervous system is actually what brings these information, these signals, to the central nervous system, and what takes these information, these signals, out from the central nervous system. And so the peripheral nervous system can be divided into two parts. One that brings the information to the central nervous system, and one that takes the information out from the central nervous system. Therefore, the peripheral nervous system consists of a sensory division or afferent division and a motor division or efferent division. It is better to call the divisions of the peripheral nervous system the sensory division and the efferent division, and we'll soon see why. Let's focus at the sensory division of the peripheral nervous system first. That is the afferent division. The sensory division is for sensing things such as sight, smell, touch, and even pain, for example. The sensory division basically sends these information to the central nervous system through sensory neurons. So the afferent division of the peripheral nervous system is basically where we have these sensory neurons here, for example. They will bring information to the central nervous system, to the CNS, to the spinal cord, as shown. And this is done when a signal comes. It can be signals coming from our eyes, vision. It can be touch signals. It can be pain signals. But these sensory neurons will basically bring this information to the central nervous system, so to the spinal cord, for example. This information can then travel up to the brain for processing, for interpretation, for integration, and to see if a proper response is needed. The actual response is part of the motor division of the efferent division of the peripheral nervous system. This is where it takes the information, the signal, from the central nervous system, so from the brain or spinal cord, and sends it to a target cell through efferent neurons. The signals being sent from the central nervous system to the target cell can be voluntary, meaning that it is consciously controlled, or it can be involuntary, which means that it is without our control. An example of an involuntary response is our heart, because we have no control over our heartbeat. It always has to beat. And because there is a voluntary and involuntary efferent neuron, we further divide the efferent division of the peripheral nervous system, so the motor division you can say, but the efferent division of the peripheral nervous system, into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is the control of voluntary movements, and the autonomic nervous system is the control of involuntary responses. Let's look at the somatic nervous system first. An obvious example of the somatic nervous system is where information or signals is coming from the central nervous system through these efferent neurons here to target skeletal muscle cells for movement. So skeletal muscle cells are the target cells. And this is part of the somatic nervous system because we can consciously and voluntarily move our arms and legs, right? Then we have the autonomic nervous system, which is the control of involuntary responses. To make this a bit more confusing, the autonomic nervous system can be further divided into two divisions, the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. Both the sympathetic and parasympathetic division is what we have no control over because it's involuntary. And both are completely different to each other. For example, the sympathetic division are switched on or are more active during exercises, so during sport. And that is why the sympathetic division is sometimes referred to as the fight or flight response. And the parasympathetic division, obviously, is less active during exercise, during sport. Now, both divisions of the autonomic nervous system, they take information from the central nervous system to a target cell involuntarily. For example, the information here is being sent to the heart's conduction system through efferent neurons. There are two, as you can see. And this is typical of the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic division in particular will actually they will take these signals from the central nervous system to the target cell, that is the heart, to cause it to increase in heart rate, because we always have an increase in heart rate during activity, during exercise, right? The parasympathetic division, on the other hand, is usually opposite of the sympathetic division. It is called the rest and digest response. And so it will cause a decrease in heart rate or slow the heart rate down. The parasympathetic division is actually more active during rest and when we eat, for example. What you have to try to understand is that the sympathetic and the parasympathetic response does not only target the heart, it can target other organs. For example, it can target the gut and the salivary glands, for example, but both have opposite responses to each other. And that concludes the video on the divisions of the nervous system. Just recapping, you have the two main systems, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system, we have the afferent division and the efferent division. The afferent division brings in information to the central nervous system. The efferent division takes information from the central nervous system to a target cell. But when it takes the information to a target cell, it can be a voluntary signal or an involuntary signal. And so we have the somatic and the autonomic nervous system divisions. The autonomic, which is the involuntary response, is divided further into the sympathetic response and the parasympathetic response. Both contradict each other and do opposite things to each other. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.
So basically, sometimes we're just out of our minds. When we are triggered, there are certain things that, caught unawares, we have no control over. And that's why it is hard work and practice to rewire these triggers that have been laid down so steadfastly over the years, because our nervous system gets dysregulated and we literally flip our lids. So nervous system dysregulation signifies the state of imbalance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And this can manifest in the body as pain, fatigue, bladder and stomach issues, and even partial or total paralysis. I had a friend that was traumatized, that was paralyzed for over a year. And that's from emotional pain. Pardon me. Medical professionals call these ailments functional or somatoform illnesses, meaning they are not linked to any physical or perceivable disease, and are instead attributed to the highly complex mechanisms of the nervous system. Nervous system dysregulation makes us oversensitive and overreactive to perceived threats, even if there is no rational danger. For example, when joining a meeting for work or entering a room where you don't know anyone, or standing on the stage and having to do a speech. They say that public speaking, people fear it and they feel like they're dying sometimes. And then nervous system dysregulation most often presents as emotional symptoms, such as depression, anxiety, a pervasive sense of depletion, like burnout, irritability and snapping at people, emotional overreactions or underreactions, like shutting down, numbing out, and a difficulty of shifting out of negative emotional states. The person can become stuck physically in the sympathetic nervous system activation all the time and not be able to shift to rest. And that's where insomnia comes in and burnout. As the adrenal glands that sit behind the kidneys literally become depleted, and the body is then forced to rest and reset. And this is where chronic diseases come in. This is where fibromyalgia comes in, chronic migraines, chronic fatigue syndrome, where you are forced to rest and be still. You go into a deep rest when you are depressed, because you literally are burnt out. And this is what it looks like. And in the video later, when we send it to you, you can pause it and look at it in detail. But what happens to the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is your brain of higher rational, logical thinking, actually shrinks. And your corpus callosum, your hippocampus, are enlarged, and your amygdala, which is in the back of your brain, becomes red hot and more reactive to outbursts. The resolution is safe and stable, nurturing relationships. Someone you feel safe with, that you can be yourself with, that you don't have to protect yourself against. Also, the resolution is walking in nature, touch, and exercise. Neural pathways, the wiring in our brain, need to be rewired from old thought patterns and habits of mind. Conscious and unconscious, the resolution is meditation, mindfulness, positive self-talk. And during the trauma counseling course over the 6 weeks in November, we are going to be sharing with you techniques and tools and practices to rewire those old limiting beliefs, those voices in your head from the past that are now destroying the present and the future. Then your hormones, even male and female hormones, due to the high cortisol and the ghrelin, creates greater reactivity to stress. This can cause people to become infertile and not be able to fall pregnant. It causes PCOS and all kinds of reproductive and sexual effects, negative effects. Also, your other glands, like your thyroid gland, can become hypo or hyper. You can even get immune disorders like Hashimoto's, where the thyroid actually attacks itself and destroys itself. What is the resolution oxytocin, the love hormone. And as a counselor, or a coach, you can make your client feel safe and accepted and shed agape love, God love with them. And it's healing. They also need healthy relationships in their family and their friends where they can receive that oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that is released by mother's milk. And how many babies have had moms that are so stressed or have not had that mother-child bonding? Then toxin elimination. When you are in trauma, your intestines and your kidneys are less able to eliminate toxins. So the gut slows down and your microflora in your gut becomes diseased. The resolution is salt baths, sauna, detoxing. Then your nervous system is supercharged. You're on hypervigilance, hyper alert for danger. The parasympathetic nervous system's not engaged at all because people get stuck. So to bring it back into balance, you need things like qigong, yoga, breathing, or other physical emotional regulation. If there's anger, maybe contact sports, squash, boxing, weightlifting. The immune system, resistance to cortisol or lower cortisol, creates unchecked inflammation. And doctors have found that most diseases are caused by inflammation, asthma, arthritis. The resolution is meditation, mindful action, walking in nature, diet, and rest. Then your brain waves. Predomination of the wrong brain waves in wrong parts of the brain lead to anxiety, unable to concentrate, and even in worst case scenarios, seizures. People that have had a lifestyle change, a life transformation, have even stopped having epilepsy. And there they talk about neurofeedback, and one or two of my clients have had neurofeedback, and it's had an amazing effect on their brains. Then neurotransmitters. Because all of these feel-good hormones and these aren't there, and the stress hormones are there, there's a vulnerability to addiction because dopamine transmitters and receptors are not developed or they're damaged. So we can see with a lot of juveniles, I know a lot of Albane's clients, kids started smoking at 6 or 9 because they're trying to soothe themselves and self-medicate and to activate the dopamine transmitters. What happens is their motivation and their focus is gone. So they do poorly at school. They're tired. They have low serotonin, which causes depression, which causes helpless and hopelessness. And then in the very cells of your body, pardon me, it shortens telomeres. Now, telomeres, scientists have discovered, telomeres look like a string of beads. And the more stress you have, the shorter the string of beads becomes. So as soon as your telomeres don't exist anymore, you die. So it shortens your life, trauma and stress. You die prematurely, you age prematurely. It reduces reproduction. A lot of women that go through trauma and stress go into menopause in their late 20s, early 30s already. So it even causes cancer. The resolution is social support. We are relational beings. We need other people to support us. Epigenetics turns genes on and off in adaptation to dangerous environments. We always hear about nurture or nature. So are you the result of your genes, the parents, the ancestors? There is a degree of that. And I want to put it to you that environments, nurture, can have an effect on lasting generations. The sins of the fathers are visited upon the children of third and fourth generation. So the resolution is safer environments, or the perception of safer environments. Now, how much time do our children spend in our homes? And what other environments are they in? And I know as a child, I found some classrooms highly unsafe, perceived them to be unsafe. Just as some food for thought. We're going to look at trauma in children, because trauma is an exceptional experience in which powerful and dangerous stimuli overwhelm the child's capacity to regulate the emotions, even much more so than adults. Alvain will be able to tell you that the little one's brain has not got the capacity to reason and interpret and understand as an adult. That part of the brain is only fully developed at 25. Importantly, the perception or the subjective appraisal of danger or trauma varies by age and stage of development. And during the course in November, we're going to be looking at the different ages of children and what their perceptions and their appraisal and the effect it has on them and their stages of development are, and how to counsel and coach and support a child to heal and become empowered and resilient to face this dangerous world we live in. So when does crisis evolve into trauma? So a crisis is a sudden event that maybe creeps up slowly on us and becomes overwhelming and unmanageable. So there are different kinds of crises. The one is development crisis. In development crisis, this could be happening in a person from birth, teen, marriage, or even aging, especially aging. I look at my mother that's 85 now, and her resistance to stress that is so greatly diminished. So even normal events are found to be overwhelming, like a fridge breaking down, for instance. But this is a development crisis. Then there's a destructive crisis. These are abnormal, with unexpected loss of control of normal or essential areas of lifestyle. Now, there are a myriad of ways that one can experience a destructive crisis. Remember, it's an unexpected loss of control of what you have experienced as normal and totally necessary for your life. Something you've lost or lost control of. Accidents, retrenchments, operations. It is life before the crises, and life after the crises will never be the same again. And what could that look like? And then there is the existential crisis that comes after that. Why did this happen to me? What is the meaning of my life in the face of this? What happens when we die? These existential questions belong in the realm of spiritual distress. And I want to invite you to consider that an existential crisis could be such a wake-up call, such a catalyst for the unfolding of our purpose, of our calling, of the unfolding of our potential. And this existential crisis is what I had at 43 that brought me to coaching and to doing the work I do. Now, when crisis evolves into trauma, trauma is a shock impact experience. It leads to psychological, emotional ordeal, a wound with an often lengthy and negative whole person reaction. Remember, with trauma, there is no choice and there's a loss. Some of the causes of trauma, and there are many. Look at emotional abuse, natural disasters, domestic violence, grief, the loss of a loved one, neglect. I want us to pause there. Neglect, not just of little ones or the aged, but neglect, emotional neglect, being rejected. Then injury in humans, terrorism, death, childhood abuse, which is one of the most obvious, and sexual abuse. And then acute trauma, which could be burn wounds, full body burn wounds. It could be many, many things. And bullying, physical abuse, even witnessing violence. And you know, guys, how much violence do we witness on television these days? How are the wars that we are watching and our children are seeing affecting our consciousness and our nervous systems? Is it no wonder that we sometimes battle to sleep at night? Assault and war. And now I want us to just pause for a moment. I want you to reflect on your life. Have you experienced any of these? And how did you react when it came at you? And how did you cope? And I invite you, if you wish, to put your responses in the chat box. Because what you can own doesn't own you. So, Alvain, I want to ask you to please keep an eye on the chat box and to share anonymously anything that comes up. And anybody that would like any more information or has questions around what you are becoming aware of now.
Hello everyone. I'm using my cell phone, so I can't raise my hand. I'm sorry for that. I'm not very familiar with using my phone. So honestly, for me, this session is like a therapeutic session for me because a lot of things are making sense, if I may use the word for a lack of a better word. I feel like going forward, when I have sessions with clients who are going through trauma or who have experienced trauma, I will handle it in a very different way. Since I'm like this informed, I'm a new graduate, and it's just mind blowing. I never understood trauma as intensive as I think I do now, after you have explained it so clearly and it's so understandable, and yet it was in depth. So I really, really appreciate this session, and I'm glad I joined because this is like a life-changing moment for me, honestly speaking. And personally as well, because I believe most of us who are in this kind of field is because it's a calling, it's what we've experienced before, and we want to make um, the lives of other people better based on our experienced and professional experiences. And I thank you. You have not finished yet, but I honestly am grateful.
Thank you so much for sharing so authentically and vulnerably. And yeah, this knowledge moves our hearts, it gives us empathy and compassion, and brings us to awareness that people have no control at that stage. And my wish is that you join us for the trauma counseling so that we can allow their hands to go back, so that they can gain a sense of control and efficacy, and they have tools to calm themselves down, soothe their nervous systems, to see things in a new way, and to become empowered and to heal. So thank you so much for sharing.
And from the chat box, thank you for the people who's taking the courage to share with us. Paula says, my attending LUSA coaching sessions have really, really helped me with the process of healing. Lisa says, emotional neglect, acute trauma, physical abuse, witnessing violence, serious illness, react, going to have, go back and think and cope. I think day by day, and my faith, not doing so well with it all as I thought. Noro says, such a very, very informative session. Thank you so very much. It has opened my mind. And then Dion says, I was in a home where alcohol was abused. I left school at 16 to get out of the house, and I was married at the age, I was married at the age, I can't see, there's something in between there. And I had 2 children at 18. Later divorced, but now married to a wonderful man who loves me dearly. Okay, so that is Dion's wife. That is on his name there. Jonathan says neglect and emotional abuse, complete shutdown in joy and motivation at the time. I guess the biggest help from uh, from time and support of family and true friends, watching positive videos and spending time with happy people. Lisa says, I will definitely join. Yes, Dion's wife is Mandy. That's it. Teresa says, I think we need to understand that nobody's trauma is bigger than your trauma. I guess no matter how small your trauma seems against other trauma, it is still traumatic. And that is all
As
from
you,
the chat box.
wow, I want to acknowledge your courage and your bravery and your realness. Absolutely. So the journey has just started. And as I said, it's hard work. It's the work of a lifetime. And one never truly arrives, but you learn how to identify your triggers, to use your creativity and your higher cognitive ability to intentionally respond in a way that supports your wholeness and your spiritual, emotional, physical well-being. And then I really look forward. I know Mandy's going to be joining us in the trauma counseling. That's going to be amazing. Lisa's joining us. So thank you so much for sharing. And everything's built on awareness. Because when you know better, you can do better. And acknowledging what has happened to you and giving it a voice. And then learning self-care and conscious habits and rewiring the mind so that our wounds can become our medals and our mess can become our message. And we can, as Jonathan said, experience more joy in life. So intervention is necessary. I'm going to just diminish the videos at this moment. Once a person experiences a stressor, a stressful event, a situation, conditions, or crisis, the stress response kicks in. And it happens throughout our lives. And momentarily, we experience that loss of control and balance and a decrease in our physical, mental, and emotional efforts to cope. And this is stress. And this is when an intervention, such as a trauma debriefing, trauma counseling, or coaching is needed to provide support, to provide that safe space, to have the skills to calm your client's nervous system down, to restore the breathing, the blood pressure, the physical maladies, and then proactively whole person adjustments need to be made in the day-to-day life to regain balance, to control these stresses so that the person can move forward into a life of well-being once more. So Alvin and I, we invite you to a truly unique trauma course that will provide you with the skills, the practices, and the tools to assist children, teenagers, adults, and yourself on the journey from current or with undealt trauma. Because many of us have just bounced back and swept it under the rug and said, I'm A-okay. But you know what? The body holds the score. The body holds the score. And we invite you to join us on this journey from surviving to truly thriving. I'm going to play a video of testimonials from our last trauma counseling course, so you can hear how other people just like you have experienced it.
So I think for me, I first and foremost would like to just express my gratitude to the team that have put this together for all of us. It's been an incredible tool, an absolute gift to us, and we have learned hugely. And so I think we just want to honor you and bless you as you've shared so deeply and vulnerably with us. We're very grateful to you. So I think I just wanted to say that from
For me personally, I really loved the session on when we spoke about children and we spoke about their trauma. And I think what's been interesting for me is a lot of what adults go through has been undealt with childhood trauma. And so it's just more of an understanding and a perspective that there's actually such value in equipping or just being in a role where you have influence over a child, and over a teenager in those years, and to help them discover freedom early on. And it's always just, there's intricacies, and I think every situation is different, but ultimately how we all have experienced some form of trauma. And so that goes without saying, it's like trauma in children cannot be avoided, but it can be assisted. And so I think what a huge blessing and role that I think I get to have is to be able to have the tools now to somewhat assist some learners with, accurate language or just a directing in the way that they handle things. And I think something that has constantly come up for me is it's a path towards wholeness and healing, which I think is ultimately what we all long for when we've gone through something that is really difficult, even if we haven't, but during our everyday life, we want to feel whole, we want to feel complete, and we all want to experience healing. And so to see a child through that lens of they deserve that too, they deserve wholeness and healing. And so I loved in one of the sessions when it was brought up how behind a behavior is a whole thread of what they've experienced. And so a child is not their behavior, instead they are what they've gone through. And I think I see that in adults too. My mom was an alcoholic and she passed away a couple of years ago. And when she was around, I really struggled to separate the behavior from the person. And it was only until she passed away that I really got to experience that forgiveness and that healing, and that that separation of what she was doing was separate from who she was. But I think, oh my word, what the freedom I would have experienced if I had realized that earlier on. And so I think to help people see their children, their parents in that same light, with these tools is going to be such a great privilege. And so super grateful.
And what a privilege to have been on this program with all of you. Everybody's contribution here has been absolutely amazing. I'm always reminded of every single person who we interact with and who God guides to us to help with healing, are uniquely wired. And they are individuals with there's no duplicate of what one person experiences in trauma, even if it's a similar situation. Everyone is a unique individual. And there have been so many tools here, it's actually difficult to just pinpoint which one were the greatest. A lot of them, some of them are refreshers, some of them are just just packaged so nicely. But the steps that we went through for somebody to actually become responsible and acknowledge and take ownership of their situation and their thought process was incredible. One thing that I'd like to add to that is asking people, how does that help you? Whatever they're thinking of. And I relate it back to some clients I've had who have just been absolutely stuck because they're stuck on their way of thinking. But as soon as you ask them, how does that thought help you? How does your thinking help you? Or, the fact that you don't want to change your thoughts. But these tools just bring everything, so nicely together in opening up a person's mind to there is a different way of thinking and different possibilities. And it's just knowing when to draw on these tools that are more useful for one person than another. We're not going to use all the same tools for everyone. So there's a beautiful bouquet of tools that you've shared with us, which is fabulous. And lots of little nuggets that I know subconsciously I will, as well as everybody else, I'm sure, we draw on it in the moment.
So thank you. It was marvelous. Everything was amazing. And it's really going to help me with my grandchildren as well. I loved what Claudia shared about children, and I just really am so aware of my grandchildren and their behavior. And yeah, there's just so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Honestly, this course is phenomenal. It really is. I think the way you've given us the tools in such clear, concise manner, honestly sets us up to help people so well. I'm just reminded of the scripture the whole day today, is that we triune being spirit, soul, and body. And he caused us, and his desire for that is for us, is for those parts of our being, all of them, to prosper. That's what his scripture says. That's what his word says. And that everyone here in this room, we get to be part of that in somebody else's journey, which is no small thing. And also the vulnerability of sitting in a group where people share their hearts, share their difficult times, because it's that vulnerability that actually brings you into the place of really helping and understanding other people.
There's one of my students who came in, I don't even remember when was it. She wanted to give away her child because she felt that she can't really take care of the child. Because I am a strong believer that, you know what, once you have a child and you are a mother, your responsibility is to make sure that the child thrives in life. And I didn't give an opportunity to answer what was her risk. And I kept on saying to her, you know what, you are your risk. This child is your responsibility. There is no way that you can actually give away your child, instead of probing and find out what exactly is making her feel that way. That is what we shared with Sarah. But thank you so much for everything. You've given us so many tools that we can use, and yeah, we'll carry on and do what God has laid in our hearts to do. Thank you.
So I think
So that was an amazing journey with 9 really unique, called human beings, as you are. So the trauma counseling course is starting on the 4th of November. It's going to comprise of 12 hours, 2-hour, 6 sessions of 2 hours each, twice per week on Mondays and Thursdays between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the morning. And it's going to be a comprehensive course that will last 3 weeks. We're going to be doing the sessions on Zoom as now, but it's going to be quite different because it's going to be an open platform where there'll be a lot of engagement. It will not be me talking and you just listening, but total engagement and an open, safe space where we can share and we can learn from each other and support each other. You'll also have access to our LMS platform, where Alvin will send you a link. It's like an online university with your training manual, plenty of videos, templates that you can use with your clients and for yourself, many tools and resources. And this is absolutely a journey from trauma to resilience. There's going to be a wellness plan that at the end of the journey, we'll have a maintenance phase where we'll implement these new practices into our life. Lots of mindfulness where, as we've seen, a lot of trauma is stored in the body. So ways to become mindful of what's showing up in the body, relaxing it, breathing exercises, getting in touch with nature, being able to ground yourself when you're overwhelmed and come back to calmness and logic and rational creative thinking. After each session, the session recordings will be emailed to you, so you'll be able to watch the sessions over and over again. Oopsie. Oopsie. So normally this course costs 9,000 Rand, but there's an early bird special for you. If you register in the month of September, you'll have a 3,000 Rand discount, and it will cost you an investment of 6,000 Rand. I want to leave you with this thought. Each person holds so much power within themselves that needs to be let out. Sometimes they just need a little nudge, a little direction, a little support, a little coaching, and the greatest things can happen. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my heart, my passion, and the blessing of the wisdom that I've been blessed to receive. And if there are any questions, anything you'd like to share, you can put it in the chat box. And then I'm going to also hand over to Olvain to share with you how you can register for this course. And I look forward to meeting you and connecting with you personally and traveling this journey to wholeness and thriving with you and equipping you to be instruments of healing and transformation in the lives of those that God will bring along your path. Olvain?
Thank you so much, Diane. I just want to ask, is there SACE points available for the course that the people do in November?
Okay, there are ETDP, CETA, Continuous Professional Development.
Okay,
Points.
so there is SACE points available, especially if you're teachers and I think social workers as well. Yes, and you do get an attendance certificate for attending this course in November. So what I've done is in the chat box, I've shared the registration form with you. But what I will do is, you know, I know everybody is not IT clued up. So once I send you the recording link of tonight's session, I will also in that email include the registration form for you so that you can register there via the email as well. And then, like Diane said, it is if you register up to September, you get a 3,000 Rand discount. And that gives you an opportunity to make the payments if you want to in September and a payment again in October, so that it's not a huge payment that you have to make, you know, at once. Thank you everybody for saying thank you for the session, the information, and the fact that it was insightful and that you appreciate it. We appreciate that you made the time to attend. So what I can tell you is I also attended the trauma course. I am also a Commensa certified life coach. And there's actually a huge difference in the way that you approach when people are dealing with trauma in life coaching sessions, because there's certain other things that you use. There's other tools. There's another way that you handle this trauma when you're doing life coaching with a client. And I think it is the same for when you're just a social worker or even an HR person, whoever you are, and you're working with people. We tend to overlook the real trauma and the pain that people are going through. And many times you say, you know what, drink 'n disprin en kom nie daaroor. Luister, kry vir jou hout en bou 'n brug en kom daaroor. As Diane said, every person, and one of the testimonials said it as well, everybody's not the same. Some people will deal with death, and within a month or a week, they are over the death. They will continue with their lives. Other people takes up to 2-3 years. Some people do not get over another person's death. So every person is different, and that's why when you work with people in counseling, each person should not be treated as another person. And you should not have presuppositions. You should not have ideas in your mind of how this should play out for this person. It's not your trauma. It's their trauma. And they have to deal with their trauma. What you need to do is counsel them in the process of going through the trauma till they get to a place where they are healed. And like I said, for some people, it can be 1 or 2 sessions. For other people, it might take up to a year. So, yeah, this course definitely helped me where I deal with trauma. I coach in a different way. I ask different questions, and I do it with a different heart, if I can say that. So I really hope that we're going to see you in the course in November. Most of you received my emails. So if you have any questions afterwards, I know sometimes you don't want to ask a question in a chat box. Sometimes if you're like me, tonight when you go to sleep, the questions start popping up in your head. And then tomorrow morning, you're like, I should have asked this question. So if you have questions, please email it to me. And then I will forward it to Diane, and then she will respond on that. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Diane, for also taking time for tonight, and everybody who attended. We really appreciate it. I hope you have a blessed evening, and that you were not a lot traumatized by the winter, but that the spring will bring some healing into your hearts as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sleep well. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Alvain.